Hi, I'm Maxine from the library's research support team. In this video, I'll talk you through some examples of the types of issues you might face when including third-party copyright works in your thesis, to help you to understand some of the potential complexities. If you haven't already, we suggest you take a look at our video, Copyright and Your Thesis, which gives further context for understanding copyright issues in relation to your doctoral thesis. Okay, so let's look at some examples. Andy would like to use 2 lines from a short poem by T.S. Eliot on the title page of his thesis to set the scene and introduce his research topic in an engaging way. Andy finds out that T.S. Eliot died in 1965, so he thinks the work is still in copyright. However, he believes that since he's only used a small amount of the poem, this can hardly be considered substantial. Is Andy right, or does he need to seek permission to include this material in his thesis? And he's right that the work is still in copyright, since it's less than 70 years since the author's death. However, substantial use is very subjective and is not defined by law. If a rights holder feels that a substantial part of their work has been used, they can challenge use and follow court proceedings as they deem necessary. Anything over a couple of lines from a longer poem should be cleared, but even a single line of poetry from a shorter poem could be considered substantial. Given how subjective substantial use is, we would advise Andy to check with us first, but in this instance, he would most likely need permission from T.S. Eliot's estate, and this could be expensive to clear as he is a high-profile author. No student is expected to pay for copyright clearance. So, in this example, we would advise Andy to either consider finding an alternative quote from a work available in the public domain, such as Shakespeare, Dickens, or Oscar Wilde, for example, where the author died more than 70 years ago, or Andy can submit a redacted version of his thesis for upload to the repository. Full details on how to do this are included on the thesis deposition form when you come to submit. Okay, let's look at another example now. Jamira's thesis explores how social stigma is represented in Broadway musicals, and she wishes to include several extracts from the 1984 printed score of West Side Story. Jamira knows that this will probably be considered substantial, but is not sure who she needs to contact to gain permission, since this published work includes both lyrics and musical notation. She's also unsure how long this type of work is protected for. The copyright duration of composed music is the same as for books, paintings, and other literary and artistic works. The author's lifetime plus 70 years, so it is still protected by copyright. Our advice would be to find the acknowledgement or copyright wording on a published work to identify the rights holders, or contact the publisher if nothing else is evident. In this example, there are 2 copyright holders in this work. For Jamira to use an extract from the printed score, she would need to get permission from Bernstein's estate for the music notation and from Sondheim's estate for the lyrics. However, if Jamira is scanning the original musical score, there is also copyright protection on the layout of the published edition, referred to as the typographical arrangement, which lasts for 25 years from its first publication. Since the score was published in 1984, copyright protection has expired for the typographical arrangement. So, provided Jamira gets permission from Sondheim and Bernstein's estates, she can include the extracts of the musical score in her thesis. Sam's thesis explores the presentation of identity through self-portraiture in art. He wishes to include several images of Picasso self-portraits he has found online. These images are photographs taken of Picasso works hanging in national galleries. Whose permission does Sam need to seek to include these images in his thesis? Photographs can be a particularly tricky area of copyright, as even if you are the original photographer, you may be taking pictures of materials in which someone else owns the rights. In this example, both the photographs and the artworks that appear in them are copyright works. The image file needs clearing with its creator, and the artistic rights in the painting need to be cleared with Picasso's estate. Clearance can be requested via the Design and Artists Copyright Society, or DACS. DACS is the main trusted UK agent artists and their estates use to license their content. You can search their website to find out if the artists whose work you want to reproduce is represented by DACS and request permission. But if you're ever unsure of who to contact to clear copyright in artworks, please get in touch with us for advice. You might be thinking that if these artworks are hanging in a public exhibition space, Sam would be able to go and photograph these works himself and then include them. Most galleries will have entry conditions which restrict photography for this very reason. Even where photography is allowed, this does not mean that you then have the right to reproduce the images you take. This leads us to another important point. Be wary of using images of artworks found on Wikipedia or Flickr, as these digital images may have been created without the artist's permission. Again, if you're unsure, contact us for advice. So in this example, Sam needs clearance from the image creator, so the photographer, and Picasso's estate. If a payment is required, which is often the case with big-name artists, we would encourage Sam to instead submit a redacted copy of his thesis to Oro for online publication. Let's look at a final example now. Priya is researching sediment transport in UK rivers and needs to include several maps in her thesis. She found some of these maps online, but others are in print format and look to be old, and she isn't sure whether or how she should seek permission to include these. As artistic works, maps and charts have 70 years protection. If Priya has used a digital map from organisations such as Ordnance Survey or Digimap, for example, she should check the relevant licence on their site to see if use is permitted. It should be noted that Ordnance Survey are particularly protective of their rights, and that reuse of its maps without express permission is a high-risk approach, so always contact them first. For maps obtained from a book or in print, she should check who owns the copyright in the map. This should be indicated either within the map, in the acknowledgements, or in a list of figures at the beginning of a book. Some older printed maps or charts may be out of copyright if they are over 70 years old. However, old maps in digital format will not be out of copyright, since the digital file has become a new artistic work in its own right. So, the advice for maps and charts differs depending on whether they're in print or digital format. And remember that digital images of print maps may have two copyright owners, the creator of the digital image and the original map creator, so you may need to contact both. As you can see, it's not always easy to decide whether you need permission to use certain materials, or to find out who owns the copyright. If you're ever unsure or would like further advice, please get in touch on library-research-support@open.ac.uk. Thanks for watching.